On May 10, 1972, Nellie Hicks, a 59-year-old resident of Newark, California, suffered a vicious attack in her own home. The identity of the assailant remained unknown. Fast forward to May 15, 1979. Teresa Pica, age 48, encountered a similar fate in Hayward, California, just a 20-minute drive from where Nellie was attacked. Despite the collection of evidence at both crime scenes, the lack of DNA testing capabilities at the time meant no conclusive links could be made initially. However, by the end of 1979, new evidence suggested a connection between the two cases. Yet the perpetrator still eluded capture. Who could be responsible for these heinous acts? And why, after all these years, has no one been brought to justice? Nellie Hicks, born in 1913, was a devoted mother and a respected teacher, living a life marked by dedication and resilience. At the age of 59, she was a fourth-grade teacher at Ashland School in San Lorenzo, California, and had already raised 6 children. David Hicks, the youngest of Nellie's children, often spoke of his mother with great admiration. He described her as a hero, someone who not only raised a large family, but also managed to instill strong values and a sense of responsibility in all her children. Nellie and her husband, who was a volunteer firefighter and a general contractor, met in North Dakota. The family moved from Texas to North Dakota and finally settled in San Lorenzo, California, where Nellie began her significant educational career. Life in San Lorenzo was humble and busy. Nellie's husband worked various jobs, including at the main store in downtown San Lorenzo, to support the family. Meanwhile, Nellie juggled her responsibilities as a teacher with the demands of raising 6 children. Her ability to manage her professional and personal life effectively was nothing short of miraculous, according to David. He fondly recalled how his mother considered turning 18 a major milestone, at which point her children were given the choice to either pay rent or move out. Yet the door was always open for visits, which kept the family bond strong even as the children ventured into adulthood. All of Nellie's sons joined the service by the age of 18, and her daughter got married at the same age. As time went on, the family relocated from San Lorenzo to Newark, marking a new chapter in their lives. This move coincided with Nellie's transition to another school due to the shutdown of Russell City Elementary. Teresa Pica, born on July 22, 1930, lived a relatively private life in Hayward, California, with her children. At 48 years old, not much about her personal life, relationships, or profession was widely known, which perhaps added a layer of mystery to her story. Like many before her, Teresa's life was seemingly ordinary, focused around the rhythms of family life and the quiet everyday moments that rarely made the headlines. Despite the lack of public details about her career or personal endeavors, it was clear that Teresa was a central figure in her family's life, maintaining a household in Hayward, a town known for its community-oriented spirit. Hayward, nestled in the Bay Area, provided a setting for Teresa and her children that balanced suburban tranquility with the bustling energy of nearby cities. On the morning of May 10, 1972, a quiet tragedy unfolded in the home of Nellie Hicks in Newark, California. Nellie, a 59-year-old mother and teacher, was sharing her residence with her adult son, his wife, and a close friend who was also a teacher. The night before the incident, Nellie's friend had a brief conversation with her around 1 a.m., as Nellie was dozing off on the living room sofa. This conversation would tragically mark the last time Nellie was seen alive. Approximately 4 hours later, The calm of the early morning was shattered when Nellie's son made a horrifying discovery. He found Nellie's lifeless body in the same room where she had been resting earlier. The scene was disturbing. Her wallet was missing, indicating a possible motive for robbery. Reacting to the grim sight, her son covered her up, preserving her dignity and the crime scene as best he could, given the circumstances, before rushing to call the police. The police who arrived at the scene to begin their findings were confronted with the task of piecing together the events that led to such a tragic outcome. The home, which should have been a sanctuary for Nellie and her family, had turned into a crime scene. The presence of her son and his wife in the house added layers of complexity to the case. Investigators had to consider all possible scenarios. Was this a random act of violence? Could someone known to the family have committed this crime? The initial clues were scant, and the missing wallet pointed to a robbery, but nothing could be immediately confirmed. The community was left reeling from the news of Nellie's death. As a teacher and a long-standing member of her community, her loss was deeply felt by many, particularly by those who knew her personally and by the families whose children had been her students. As the investigation into Nellie Hicks's cruel murder unfolded, detectives found her missing wallet a few blocks away from her home, next to a pair of blood-stained underwear. This clue was significant, but complicated the narrative of what had happened that fateful night. Inside the house, other occupants, including her adult son and his wife, claimed they were asleep when the tragedy occurred. This led investigators to theorize that the intruder had managed to knock Nellie unconscious before assaulting her. The crime scene was grisly. Her body was partially naked, and she had been viciously assaulted and bludgeoned with a brick that was wrapped in pantyhose. The force of the blows was so severe, it split her head open. The perpetrator had entered the home through an unlocked sliding glass door. Evidence suggested that manicure scissors were used to cut her dress and bra. Despite being a well-liked and respected teacher, and having left an abusive husband a decade earlier, those who knew her couldn't imagine who would want to harm her. Her ex-husband and other men she had dated were interrogated, but no viable suspects emerged. Fingerprints were recovered at the scene, and DNA was collected during the autopsy, but with no technology available at the time to properly analyze DNA, the case eventually went cold. 7 years later, on May 15, 1979, another horrifying crime occurred in Hayward, California, involving 48-year-old Teresa Pica. One of her twin 10-year-old daughters found her slumped over her couch, face down. She was last seen alive the night before by her 3 children. Similar to Nellie's case, Teresa's nightgown had been pulled up, exposing her legs, and her hands were bound behind her back with a rope. A blood-stained rock was discovered next to her, and a shirt had been used to gag her. An intruder had pried open a front room window to gain entry. A neighbor reported hearing rustling near the home in the middle of the night, providing the only witness account of a possible intruder. Similar to Nellie's case, Teresa's purse was missing, and her wallet and other contents were later found in a neighbor's yard and in a garbage can down the street. Despite collecting DNA evidence, the lack of technological capabilities at the time meant it could not be analyzed, mirroring the investigative frustrations of Nellie's case. In both instances, family members discovered the bodies of the victims in their homes after what appeared to be quite barbaric attacks during the night. Both women had been attacked and bludgeoned in their living rooms. The similarities in the nature of their attacks, the method of entry into their homes, and the treatment of their bodies suggested a pattern that could not be ignored. The subsequent decade saw several people investigated, but no suspects were definitively linked to the crimes. The lack of advanced forensic technology at the time of the murders significantly hampered the investigations. As forensic capabilities evolved, hope remained that one day, the evidence collected at the scenes of Nellie Hicks and Teresa Pica's murders might finally yield the answers needed to bring closure to their families and justice to their memories. The breakthrough in these cases came from advancements in DNA technology that allowed for new examinations of old evidence. The DNA evidence recovered from Teresa Pica's case had been analyzed multiple times over the years. Investigators had gone as far as exhuming the remains of a possible suspect, but DNA testing ruled him out, although it confirmed he was from the same genealogical tree as the perpetrator. This pointed to a familial connection, deepening the intrigue of the case but still leaving the crucial question unanswered. The cases took a dramatic turn in 2021, a testament to the evolution of forensic technology. The Hayward Police Department decided to collaborate with Othram, a Texas-based laboratory known for its cutting-edge approach to forensic-grade genome sequencing. Othram's ability to create detailed DNA profiles from degraded or minimal samples meant that they could reanalyze the evidence that had been stored for nearly 50 years. Using sophisticated forensic-grade genome sequencing, Othram researchers successfully developed a comprehensive DNA profile of the unknown perpetrator. This profile was a significant breakthrough, as it allowed detectives to collaborate with the FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team. Their combined efforts focused on tracing the genealogical roots of the DNA sample, mapping out a family tree that led them closer to the suspect. The intensive genetic analysis and genealogy research finally pointed to a man, Fred Bernard Farnham. The evidence was compelling, aligning his DNA with that found at the crime scenes. After years of dead ends and the heartbreaking silence that followed each lead, this discovery was a monumental step forward.
We have answers in the and murders of Hayward resident Teresa Pica and Newark resident Nellie Hicks.
Fred Bernard Farnham, identified decades later as the perpetrator behind the tragic murders of Nellie Hicks and Teresa Pica, had a history that painted a grim picture of his criminal activities. Farnham, born on February 21, 1934 in San Benito, California, moved to the South Bay Area in the 1950s, and led a life marred by a series of criminal acts that hinted at his potential for violence. Throughout the 1970s, Farnham was convicted for several in Sunnyvale and San Jose, showing a pattern of behavior that was alarmingly consistent with the violent nature of the attacks on Nellie and Teresa. His criminal activities were not confined to California. He also lived in various states across the country, including Nevada, Idaho, North Dakota, Alaska, and Oregon, which could suggest a trail of crimes extending beyond the incidents for which he was known. Despite his extensive criminal record, Farnham's connection to the murders of Hicks and Pica was only made clear after his death. He died in a hospital on May 5, 2007, at the age of 73. Without ever being confronted or charged for these specific crimes. This delayed justice was particularly distressing for the families involved, as they were denied the opportunity to see him held accountable in his lifetime. On February 8, 2024, Hayward and Newark police formally announced that Farnham was responsible for the slayings of Nellie Hicks in 1972 and Teresa Pica in 1979. This announcement brought a somber closure to the long-standing cases, linking them to a man who had a known history of violence and criminal behavior. The police also believed that Farnham could be responsible for other unsolved murders. The suspicion arose from the similarities between the crimes he was known for and other unsolved cases from the area where he lived. The families of Nellie Hicks and Teresa Pica finally had closure for the cases of their lost ones. David Hicks, Nellie's youngest son, had this to say.
I cannot express my gratitude enough for the police department and their dedication to this case. They did an outstanding job, and I have to say that Hayward Police, Newark Police, FBI agents, all of them worked extremely hard to bring closure to our family. We were a family of 6. We are currently a family of 3. And yes, I am the baby of the family. And I appreciate and thank all of you and all of the police department for your service and undying relentless to catch these criminals, or at least identify them. Thank you very much, all of you.
Teresa Pica's family had this to say.
Teresa's daughters have prepared a statement that I would like to share with all of you. First and foremost, we would like to thank the Hayward Police Department and all the agencies and personnel involved in this investigation and the tireless efforts of all to help us get to where we are today. Our mother may now rest peacefully. For us, identifying the individual that took her from our lives has given us comfort in knowing that he is in a place where he can no longer hurt another person. We give our heartfelt condolences to the other family he has harmed. Again, thank you for all your efforts, long hours, and years of hard work and persistence. We've accepted the fact that whoever did this would never come to justice. Nevertheless, we thank God for you and your diligence and for never giving up. We are forever grateful. We can now move forward and close this painful chapter in our lives. Signed, the daughters of Teresa Pica.